Hey guys, so one of the crazy things I do at the beginning of the year is a host of different games I play with myself to both ramp up my motivational level, fine tune my personal strategic planning, and just have some fun at the beginning of the year. And one of the things I do is I try to come up with these big, challenging challenges of myself in focused imagination. I give myself something to solve and I imagine what I think the solution might be, even if it's things I don't really understand in detail or know nothing about. That's the point of the exercise. To use instincts and references and loose concepts to come up with a possible path to a solution. And this year I thought I'd share because initially my personal challenge was to radically change something about myself that I didn't know how I would do. But then it dawned on me that I could easily make this a bigger challenge if I made the focus of the change something more complicated. So I'm picking the country. So my goal over the weekend was to come up with, I don't need my glasses, I'm not reading anything. Um, my goal over the weekend was to come up with the fewest number of initiatives I would do if I were in that position to make it, to mandate them happen in the country that I think would have the biggest positive impact. So, kind of like my platform, if you will. And I came up with, I think, 5 things. And of course, I don't know all the details. I'm not an expert on any of it, but this is what I came up with, so I'm sharing it. Part of the reason I decided to share this is because it might plant the seed in somebody else's more brilliant mind that grows into the domino that starts the chain reaction that leads to something actually pretty good out there. You just never know, and that I know to be true. So most of my platform components are moonshot ideas. Things like when we decided to put a man on the moon, when we didn't actually know how we would do it, if we could actually do it. We just committed to doing it and we did it. So all of mine are pretty much moonshot ideas, given the complexity of some of the things I'm going to attempt to solve. And again, I don't know the details of how some of these would happen, but I do believe that this country is filled with thousands and thousands and thousands of brilliant people. We continue to attract the best minds from around the world to join our creative family here in America, and I think that we could find people smart enough to do a version of these ideas that might actually make some sense. So that's my big long caveat. So people don't try to beat me up over how things can't work or I'm not that guy. I'm the how can thing work guy. What's possible? So the first thing I would do to both ensure we have a long-term growth for our economy and a global competitive advantage for the next 100 years. Yeah. What I would do is I would challenge us. Now, when I say us, I mean every part of the machine: businesses, state and local governments, education, research facilities, the whole deal. But I would challenge us to find a way to make the effective cost of manufacturing in this country, the energy cost of manufacturing, zero. So we would find a way through new energy sources, leveraging energy sources, new energy models, new payment models, co-op, all kind of things. We would have a host of things, but we would all be driven to have one goal, that if you have a manufacturing plant in this country, you pay zero energy costs for the effort of manufacturing. I think we, better than any other country in the world, have the freedom and flexibility to figure out that complex challenge. But if we did that, for a host of reasons, manufacturing would boom for a very long time. But not to mention that the energy industry evolution that would happen in this effort would probably create more jobs than we have people available to fill them in this country. So that's the first thing I would do: energy policy, or manufacturing policy, or economic policy, or global strategic strength policy. All of that would be addressed by that one motive. The second thing I would do, I would challenge us to, in the next 10 years or so, I don't know what the exact years would need to be. I would need the experts to tell me what they thought was possible. Then I'd probably cut that in half. But I would, in the next 10 years, I would challenge us to have the healthiest citizenship, the healthiest citizens the world has ever seen. This would be a joint effort from the food industry, pharmaceutical companies, nutraceutical companies, fast food industry, farming, all the related things that touch the process of us being a healthier person. We would also leverage in what sick care, which we now call health care, as an ancillary part of this, but that's a completely different animal. What we're trying to do is make the product of being in America, make an American a much more healthy thing. I actually think by doing that, we make the complex challenges of sick care, health care, more probable to be done in an equitable way that can actually be sustainable. And by the way, we should do this to such a degree that people want to come live here just because they know if they can pull it off, they're going to be healthier, feel better, and live longer. So that's the second big moonshot I would do. The third one, which is also a moonshot, is I would declare education a national emergency. I don't know if that's the legal term because I know all these things have legal implications, but I'd make it an emergency to the extent that I would mandate that all businesses have to partner with education, but in a very simple way. We would come up with a number, let's just call it 0.5%, that every company in America, the users of our talent, every company in America would have to contribute 0.5% of their business to education of their choice. Local schools, high schools, private schools, universities, whatever. They would have some latitude in how they pick that, because obviously they would want to pick things that serve them, which would be great because they would be building their own pipeline of talent. But they would have options in how to do this. For example, when you calculated the 0.5% of what your human capital is in your company, you could either provide that to the educational destination of your choice, right, school, by literally with human capital. So let's just say you were a company and 1% of your human capital was a person, then that means you have to provide one person to do X. They have to show up at the university, at the school of your choice, and just make themselves available to help in the effort of of education through the direction of that actual school. Just be there. I mean, think about the power of that. If all across the country, every school in the country at every level of education on a monthly basis, because how we pay these things would be staggered and built in different reasons when they do it, how they make their payments. Some would do them monthly, some would do them weekly, some would maybe do them annually, depending on how big they were and how much they had to spend. Just think about how different a school would be with the physical presence of just a functional working adult in the classroom or in the process, just there, making themselves available. How can I help? How can I help for the week? Anyway, they can either do it that way through human capital, or they can just, whatever that dollar value is, they write a check. They write a check and hand it over. But you will contribute 0.5% of the worth of your human capital in your company back into the means of creating more functional, great people in the future. So that's the third moonshot I would do. The fourth, which is probably the easiest in terms of effort, the hardest in terms of thinking, but politically would be a moonshot for sure, would be I would challenge government at both the federal, state, and local level to provide to me a 500-year plan for America. Where do we want to be in 500 years? At all levels. We would do our best to come up with this agreed upon vision. I think that, once we can stop focusing on what's going to happen next week, or what's going to happen next election cycle, or what's even going to happen in our lifetime. I think it's going to be very easy for us to move beyond the pettiness that we get bogged down in what we're in our agendas. And we're collectively trying to agree upon where we want to be as a country in 500 years. I think that changes the way we approach domestic policy, foreign policy, everything. You name it. When we have that goal in mind, that's who we're trying to become 500 years from now, it changes the way we approach everything, and it puts things that we're trying to do today in a different perspective. Once we created this 500-year plan, so my phone rang, so I'm hoping I pick it up right where I left off. But once we created this 500-year plan, we would then take that plan and disseminate it through our entire educational programs around the country in its appropriate format. So elementary school children would get very high, easy to understand concepts. Junior high, a little bit more complex. High school, more complex. University, even more complex. And it would be it would be everywhere. The vision of the country, so that everywhere, in every capacity, in every role, we would all know what we're trying to do together. I think that would dramatically change our approach to everything. We would finally be, as a country, all on the same page. And obviously, this is America, so we would be refining and changing that plan as we went along, but we would at least start from a similar place, sort of like we did with the Constitution. We started with the Constitution, and then as we have amendments to make it more either useful, effective, timely, whatever it is, the adjustments we need to make. So we'd make the 500-year plan, and then we would amend it as we became smarter about the challenge we're trying to do, because we would do that. We would get very smart on it once we had that much effort behind it. So the final moonshot, which probably would be as complicated as any of the other four I've mentioned, I would split up the two major political parties and create a third. I would ask that a percentage of each of the major political, of the Democrats and the Republicans and the Independents, but they joined this third party. Not change their ideals, not change their values, not change anything about how they think the world should be. Just change the party they're in. It changes their political allegiance, it changes the financial structure behind that. And it also changes the nature of the debate. Now you have three people that must agree on everything to get anything done, which means it's going to minimize the strategic likelihood of somebody being extreme just to be extreme. Because in every decision, it's inherently requiring a compromise. You have to get votes from one of the two other parties to make anything happen. So you approach it in that way. You approach it in a much more diplomatic way. I think it would make our political process more civil, and in many cases just more practical. And in many cases, people would be more freer to express the things that they're truly passionate about, because it would not be necessarily in conflict with some parts of their party, right? You would have more latitude, I'm thinking. That's what I agreed to be anyway. So all of these are moonshots, and again, I don't know the details of any of it. I just took a weekend. I gave myself a weekend to change the country, if I could, and the fewest number of initiatives I could come up with, and those are the 5 things that I think I do that would change our trajectory dramatically. I think it would be the greatest opportunity for us to prove to ourselves that we are who we say that we are. And there is a massive, magical, and unquantifiable reality to this American exceptionalism that we profess around the world. And it would be a great challenge. It would be a great and worthy challenge. And I think that for the next few hundred years, we would know what and why we're doing the things we're doing. So anyway, my hope is that even the idea of challenging myself to try to come up with challenges, even if somebody else just took that on, somebody brilliant, somebody connected and smart, and with the gift of articulating their brilliant ideas, maybe that that starts the chain reaction. So I do believe in my heart of hearts that we never know the effect of the waves we're creating as we wiggle in the pond. So I'm wiggling in the pond with some big, big badass intention right now, hoping that the waves reach people that can change America. Thanks, guys. See ya.